Because of the medical curriculum taught in the College of Medicine, in the medical curriculum you have community medicine, communitarian medicine, and you have biostatistics in the first year, community and then you have epidemiology, right? And research methods. So what I'm going to discuss actually is something that you are more or less familiar, not even heard about. When we do surveys, when we ask the question, have you heard about? Is it urine? What do you know about is different. So I'm sure all of you have heard of epidemiology. Now, how much you know about epidemiology? You might have that. Okay. I asked you and had a show of hands. Alright, so epidemiology is concerned with three things, no? But before we do that, let me just refer to this time. You have your handouts. I have a question there. A patient with diarrhea of 5 days duration comes to you in your clinic in a tertiary hospital. So as a clinician, what information do you obtain and how are you going to obtain the information? You have your standard way of asking questions, right? You have your subjective observations, so you have to collect this information directly from the patient, and then you have your objective measurements, vital signs, laboratory results. Okay? So you either ask questions, you observe. Okay, so clearly, the method of data collection would be by asking. Clearing method. Making observations, you touch your patient, you listen, etc. And you also review records, right? If there is a laboratory test result, then you look at it. So these are the three general methods of collecting information as a clinician. Similarly, in epidemiology, we make use of these three methods of data collection. The difference between your clinical practice, something you very well know, is that in clinical practice, your subject of interest is a patient, right? So you collect information, subjective information about this patient in front of you. Now, in epidemiology, your patient, quotation marks, is a group of people. So you collect data from each and every member of this group of people. And in the context of occupational epidemiology, this is the workers in the workplace, right? So they are similar in the sense that data collection is done, and the information obtained from data collection is used to, in clinical practice, to come up with your assessment, right? Your diagnosis. You will have to know what is the agent causing the diarrhea, through laboratory examination perhaps. And in epidemiology, we make use of this information from this group of people to come up with a diagnosis, community diagnosis this time. Clinical practice is your clinical diagnosis. So you have a community diagnosis. I'm sure you did this in medicine. And community diagnosis, you identify the problems of the community. How do we know, how do we identify or assess if some problems are present in this patient? Okay, you collect information about, say, vital signs, blood pressure, temperature. Alright, so if you have your blood pressure, how do you know it's a problem? You have acceptable levels or cutoff, right? In community medicine or epidemiology, which employs epidemiological methods, we also have basis for saying that this community has this problem. What do you think that is? Say you collect the data on the nutritional status of children. Is nutrition a problem in the community? What's your basis? Volunteers, yeah. Yeah, you collect information on weight, and then what's the next step? So you're not just getting information from one person, right? So you collect the necessary information for you to be able to label the child. For example, you talk about nutritional status among children 6 years old and below, so that you will know if the child is normally nourished or malnourished. And then what do you do next? Is malnutrition a problem in the community? You have a basis in clinical medicine, right? You compare the patient's blood pressure, temperature, etc. with acceptable levels. In public health, what we use as basis for making a decision? Oh, in community X, the percentage of malnutrition is 15%. Is it a problem? Ano kaya? Who wants to guess? Whether you will label that as a problem. In the list of community diagnosis, in the diagnosis, what are the problems in the community? Just giving you one example of data of nutritional status. It is the target of the Department of Health or of the World Health Organization. So that's contained in the document National Objectives for Health. So reduction in malnutrition by malnutrition level should be, proportion should be this. Vaccination coverage should be this. So we also have the equivalent of the acceptable levels in clinical practice in public health. And these are the targets of the Department of Health or of international organizations. Aside from that, we can also identify the condition as a problem based on trends across time. If the coverage, for example, of vaccination has been reducing across time, that is a problem. It may not be below the acceptable vaccination coverage, but it is declining. So that's a problem. Or you have a disease that is increasing in trend over time. It may not be above the cutoff for acceptable prevalence, but it is increasing. So it is a problem. So those are what we call patterns and trends in the occurrence of disease. So going back to the diarrhea example, if you are in the practice of epidemiology, you are faced with that person, with the patient, with diarrhea. What do? If you're practicing occupational epidemiology in the workplace, demanding a pasyente, ano gagawin mo? Occupational medicine, yes ha?
Identify how many employees are having that.
Very good, no? So you go beyond the patient. So of course you still do your SOAP for this patient in front of you, but you now have to investigate, find out how many other people in the workplace are suffering from diarrhea. Check your water supply. Check the food sanitation practices in the kitchen perhaps, or in the canteen of the hospital, and so on and so forth. So that differentiates a clinician from somebody who practices occupational medicine. You go beyond this patient. Okay? So, in epidemiology, our subject of interest is a group of people. Of course, the patient that comes to your attention, plus the others in the workplace. We want to identify the cause of exposure. What is causing the diarrhea? Is it the water supply in the workplace? Is it the food contaminated, probably during preparation and storage? And then, the equivalent of your management of the patient in clinical practice would be by applying public health interventions. Okay, so public health interventions are those interventions that are applied at the community level, group level. So this would be intended to prevent further spread, to stop the spread. So you check the water supply, you check the food prepared in the food establishments or in the canteen, and to prevent recurrences. Control it and then prevent it from happening again in the future. So hindi naman ibang-ibang epidemiology. Meron lang similarities and differences sa clinical practice. Do you all speak Tagalog? Meron bang hindi nakakaintindi ng Tagalog? So, pwede mag-Tagalog. Meron hindi nakakaintindi ng Cebuano? Wala. Okay. Pasabot. Okay. So, hindi marami. So, pwede tayo mag-Tagalog. So, the epidemiology, one of the earlier definitions of epidemiology is the study of the distribution and determinants of health-related states or events in specific populations. So, notice the highlight the items in both become the components: distribution, determinants, and populations. In the newer version of the Dictionary of Epidemiology, notice that there's an additional component. How exactly is that? Can we move this? Nag-block yung ano. Merong additional, meron na siya. And the application of this study to the control of the table. Dito ba yan? Ayan. That's why when you take epidemiology or translate an epidemiology course in the College of Public Health or Institute of Public Health, one of the contents of the epidemiology course is on disease prevention and control. Because you have to not just mention or identify the determinants, but you have to apply these findings to the control of that particular health problem. So these are the components: specific population. You're dealing with a group of people in epidemiology, and the group of people should be defined. You have to be very clear who this group is. And you can define them by person characteristics, like age, sex, occupation. You can define them by place, like administrative subdivisions, parameter residents, or residents of province X. Or by economic subdivision, like first class municipality, second class, etc. Or by environmental subdivisions, like the population living along coastal areas, or the population living in upland areas, the population living in rural and those in urban, or education relative to a feature in the environment. Group of people who reside within 5-kilometer radius of the river, which serves as the where the industrial wastes, for example, are disposed of. And you can also define this like population according to time. The second component is epidemiology is concerned with distribution of health-related states. So you don't only talk about the population, the prevalence of disease X in this population of workers is X%, but you also have to present a distribution of these pieces of this particular disease according to person, place, and time, because you want to create patterns of occurrence. So very important in distribution, because the distribution, for example, if you map cases of the disease, will provide you some clues about the possible cause of the disease, and what exposure is present in this area that could possibly explain the occurrence of the disease. And then determinants, these are factors capable of bringing about change in health state. So these determinants can be either a risk factor, meaning to say the presence will increase the probability of the disease occurring, and the other category of determinants will be protective factors. These are factors which, when present, prevent people from developing adverse outcomes. develop your particular disease. So a disease determinant is defined as a characteristic behavior, lifestyle, and environmental exposure, or an inborn inherited characteristics, which on the basis of epidemiologic evidence is known to be associated with health-related condition or to influence a certain outcome. So in its simplest form, that's your determinant. The factor influences the outcome. Either it increases the likelihood of disease or it prevents, it decreases the likelihood of the outcome. What are these health-related states that we are talking about? These are disease, death, disability, dissatisfaction, and destitution or extreme poverty. And we refer to this as the 6 Ds of epidemiology. Although most of the examples when we discuss epidemiology, we talk about disease, it can be any of the 6 Ds. We move on to the next component, which is application of preventive measures. So that the definition of epidemiology includes this. So this means applying the knowledge gained from studies, from the information on the occurrence, distribution, and determinants to community-based practice. You're all familiar with evidence-based medicine, right? But we also have that in public health. We refer to it as evidence-based public health. So our intervention programs from primary level of disease prevention, primordial, primary, secondary, tertiary levels are based on results of studies. They have to be evidence-based. Dr. Pino talked about the health technology assessment, and I used to sit in the council. It was formed in 2019. Technology is defined as drugs, vaccines, diagnostic tests, even policies and programs. They are all considered as technologies. This cannot be procured or financed by DOH without a positive endorsement from the Health Technology Assessment Council. So medyo super pressured because when it was created, we were just formulating the SOPs, the methods guideline, the process guideline. Tapos dumating si pandemic. So in our methods and process guidelines, for example, if there's a drug that a pharmaceutical company would like DOH to procure for its hospitals, for use in HIV patients, it would have to go through the HCAP. Supposedly 6 months. Pero we were told to finish it within 2 weeks. Or sometimes 3 days. So we were working, we were no longer sleeping, because DOH was expecting us. And one of the controversial ones was the rapid antibody test kits. So we were asked to evaluate whether DOH would procure the rapid antibody-based test kits. Based on our assessment, we did not recommend because the sensitivity specificity were less than 50%. Ano ibig sabihin ng predictive values were also less than 50%? Ano ibig sabihin ng predictive value of doon na tayo sa 50 kasi yung ibang produkto ng rapid antibody test is 40. Ano sabihin nun? If you test positive, tinest na ng rapid antibody, yung test kit. Si Dr. ay nag-test positive. The chance that she really has COVID is 50%. And the chance that she does not have COVID is 50%. So how did I explain it? Because the HRAC is composed of several disciplines. I'm one of 2 epidemiologists. Some are asking, what is it in front of hindi natin? Sabi ko, ma'am, huwag na lang mag-test. Mag-flip na lang ng coin. Patient, doktora. Pag-heads ito may COVID ka. Pag-heads ito, walang COVID. So, yun yung value. Walang value So, ang nangyari, pressure, on a televised, hindi naman ito confidential, on a televised meeting of the IETF, sabi ni Senator Bongo, Mr. President, President Duterte, hindi tayo hindi nire-recommend ng HTAC hindi tayo makabili, hindi tayo bili ng DOH. Ito na lang, give the money to another agency of government. So they procure billions of rapid antibody useless tests. Ano public notification ng ganong klaseng test? It will what? People who have the disease will continue to spread the disease because they're confident that they're negative, right? And people who do not have disease, who test positive, will be put in quarantine isolation facilities. Doon pa sila makakakuha ng sakit. At saka, they will be prevented from going to work. They will not take money. Hindi sila mapapasukin. So, ang dami ng public health implications, whether false negative or false positive. Ang nangyari, bumili pa rin ng billions ng antibody. Kasi, ang batas ng Universal Healthcare sabi, DOH and Health cannot cure. Pwede ilagay sa ibang agency of government. Hindi pinagbabawal ng batas yun. Okay, so ganun ang implication. So where do we base our decisions? Based on studies. Kasi yun ang degenerate and sensitivity, specificity of diagnostic test naman is the type of epidemiologist determining diagnostic accuracy of diagnostic tests. Okay, exercise na ng model para mag-isip kayo. Meron itong statements. Tingnan natin kung anong practice sa epidemiology ng culture. Is it looking at distribution? Is it looking at determinants? Or is it an application? Number 1, compare food histories between cases of Staphylococcus food poisoning and non-cases. Is it distribution? Determinants, very good, no? It's determinants. Finding out whether a particular food item is responsible for the Staphylococcus food poisoning. And you can only consider a factor as a possible risk or as a possible beneficial factor if you have a comparison. Compare frequency of lung cancer between those smoking in the shipyard and those in the general population. Distribution. Determinants na rin siya because you have a comparison group. Okay. So you are looking at lung cancer, frequency of lung cancer among workers in the shipyard, and frequency of lung cancer in the general population. But as we will discuss later on, there are problems with comparing data from the workplace with the general population. Because generally speaking, meron tayong healthy worker report. Yung general population, there is the workforce, those employed are generally healthy. They undergo annual physical examination. If they are diagnosed with certain disease, they're asked to go on leave, they get treated, etc. But this is the reverse kasi ang mga lakas marami naman doon sa workplace. So it's not really a good idea to compare, and I think that's why some of you answered distribution lang siya. Kasi hindi siya magandang comparison. But this is still an attempt to identify determinants of disease. Determinants of cancer. Mark on the map the residences of all children born with birth defects within 2 miles of a hazardous waste site. Distribution by which of the 3 epidemiological variables? Person, place, and time. Place. Graph the number of cases of congenital defects a year for the country. Distribution by time. Good. Tabulate the frequency of clinical signs and symptoms and place of residence among patients diagnosed with a new type of disease. Frequency. May comparison ba tayo? So it's just distribution. Okay? First, you are signs and symptoms, place, and place of residence. What about the next 6? Encourage women and their partners in areas with zika transmission to engage in pregnancy planning and counseling with their healthcare providers so that they know the risks and the ways to mitigate. This is already an application of research findings. Okay, very good. And just an example of radium dial printers. Another cancer hazard, that's the title. So you can just read it. Read it lang ba? You can read it from there. So during this period, ang daming mga babae na, they were employed to paint the faces of clocks and wristwatches with radium paint. And by 1920s, it became clear that many of these women were developing types of disfiguration and facial cancer of the paranasal sinuses. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics set up a study called a cohort study. This was, and then they had 1,260, and by 2024, it was strictly forbidden for workers to take the brushes in their mouths. Pinakagat pa lang nila yung brushes. Imbis na ilalapag sa buto. Okay. In the 1950s, more than 20 years after most exposure stopped, 396 women were examined and their body burden of radioactivity was measured via this test. And what was the finding? The 226 women who were first employed between 1915 and 1924, so sila yung sinusubo nila yung brush. Ang kanilang mean body burden was 21.19 MCI. You probably learn this in the next modules kung normal ba yung burden na yan. Hindi ko rin alam. And those women, 170, who were hired between 1925 and 1929, who were eventually found to have a mean body burden of only 1.25 MCI. So nakita niyo yung difference? Yung pinagawalan na naman subo ng brush sa bibig, mas mababa ang kanilang burden na radioactivity sa katawan. So this simple industrial hygiene reduced the exposure by over 90%. So dito meron na application. Right? So they found the pattern and then they did a study and they were able to find out that there was a marked reduction in the number of cases when that particular practice was prohibited. Okay, just some historical antecedents of epidemiology. Dati noong panahon sa natin disease was believed to be caused by evil spirits. Punishment for sins, supernatural. See Hippocrates in 400 BC. Siya lang yung nagbigay. He was the first to provide a rational basis for disease causation, rather than the previous supernatural viewpoint about disease causation. So sabi na environment is a factor in the causation of disease. In 1662, si John Brown employed quantitative methods in describing population vital statistics. Pinable lang niya. Parang napakalaking achievement niya, pinabulate lang niya yung mga mortality data. At nakakita siya ng pattern when he prepared a statistical report. So nakita siya ng pattern. So he noted disparities by sex, age, urban, rural, residence, season. So that counts. So ito yung depends on frequency distribution. Si William Farr naman is also known as the father of vital stats and surveillance because he collected and analyzed mortality data in Britain and came up with some kind of classification or categorization of diseases. And then, you're familiar with Dr. Snow. He's the father of epidemiology because of his work in investigating cholera outbreak in London. So, this study of John Snow marked the formal beginnings of the field of epidemiology. So, in the London School of Hygiene and Public Health, nandun yung liquid, parang pump. Ano siya. And then, the exact location where the staff responsible for the cholera outbreak. Kami lang tao. Of kagabi, parang hindi ka makagalaw. Kaya sila pumunta dito. Nagiinuman na yung wife ko kanila kasi sobrang siksipan. Pero it's a very popular spot in London. Bakit siya naging father of epidemiology? Kasi dinescribe na yung cholera epidemic. No? He did present the disease distribution by this. So, ang tawag natin na yung distributed epidemiology. And then, experiment siya. Tinanggal na yung handle ng pump. Doon sa sinuspect niya na source of the cholera. Kung tinanggal na yung pump, wala makakuha ng tubig from that particular pump. Bumaba ang deaths due to cholera. So, ito yung word niya. Marami. So, when we do a spot market cases, so, may isa tayong dot for the location of the case. But we also have to identify environmental features. So, ang isa, marami siyang nilagay na environmental features, pero ang hanapan niya ng factor is yung mga pumps. So, nung na-identify yung classical cases dun sa isang pump, tinanggal na yung handle. And that's due to cholera, ito na yung So, ito yung kanyang data. Yung water supply, there were two water supply companies, Southwark and Lambeth. Ito yung population, ito yung number of deaths from cholera. And then yung cholera death rate. It's 5 per thousand for those supplied by the Southwark. And 0.9 or less than 1% for Lambeth. So, may difference. No? So, inaral niya kung bakit may difference. Yung pala, in 1854, cholera rates were high in the areas supplied by both. No, because the source of the water was from the polluted part of the Thames River. Pero noong 1848, several years back, yung Lambeth relocated its source to less polluted area. So, mas mababa yung kanyang cholera incidence. You are familiar with Ignacy Semmelweis? He discovered that the incidence of puerperal fever could be drastically cut by use of hand washing standards in obstetrical care. After the observation na, kung sa baba, ay. Yan sa isang hospital, nagtataka siya bakit yung mortality ng mga nanganganak sa medical ward attended by doctors, mas mataas, 3 times higher doon sa mga wards na midwives ang nagpapanak. So, pinag-aralan niya, ano ba ang circumstances that's different between these two groups? So, nakita na yung mga doctors ay galing sa pathology, nag-investigate, nagkakalito ng mga cadavers. Hindi naman uso ang hand washing mo, kasi hindi naman natin alam na may bacteria pala. So, pagkagalit ko, diretso silang nagpapanak. Yung mga midwives naman, ay hindi nagagalit ko. So, sinabi niya that, hand washing, pero pinagtawanan siya kasi yung time na yun, marami pa po bang theories, hypothesis, pero it turned out, tama rin siya. So, pattern naman tinignan niya, look, what Dr. Snow did, he solved a huge problem, cholera deaths, by just coming up with these automatic cases relative to some features in the environment. Same with Ignacy Semmelweis. So, what were the ideas derived from history of epi? That human disease is related to man's environment. The counting of natural phenomena is more instructive than just having the random numbers of things. And natural experiments can be utilized to investigate disease causation. So epidemiology started with studies of infectious diseases, like the work of Dr. Sniffer Pollack. But later on, the methods of epidemiology were extended to studies of chronic diseases. And the two classic studies are the Framingham study in 1949, where risk factors for coronary heart disease were identified. I'm sure you've heard of this. And the Dahl and Reto study that identified smoking as a risk factor for lung cancer among British doctors. Now, the study was conducted among British doctors. It's a longitudinal study. There were about a little over 5,000 Framingham men and women between the ages of 30 and 60. They were followed up in a longitudinal study, and relationship between given characteristics and the risk of death from heart attack was identified. So ito yung landmark report nila, predictive power of blood pressure, blood cholesterol level, and cigarette smoking for heart and blood vessel diseases. You can just skip that. This is a graph of the mean number of cigarette sticks consumed by the study participants and the annual lung cancer death rates. This is a scatter plot, which is used to find out visually if an association exists between two variables. What do you think? Is there a relationship between the number of cigarette sticks consumed per day and deaths to lung cancer? It's a direct relationship, right? So as the number of cigarettes smoked per day increases, so did the death rate. But they also had a problem. Some non-smokers developed lung cancer, but some heavy smokers did not develop the disease. And so they came up with the theory of multiple causation, that there are actually a number of factors, not just one factor that is responsible for the development of a particular disease, specifically for non-infectious diseases. For infectious diseases, there's specificity between an epidemiologic agent, cholera will cause, cholera vibrio will cause cholera. Mycobacterium tuberculosis will cause TB. So, but for non-communicable diseases, such as CHD or lung cancer, wala palang isa. And then later on, kulang pa rin yung theory of multiple causation. It's not enough to explain why some people do not develop the disease. How many of you have encountered in your practice when, for example, a teenager or a young adult, you see a young adult in your clinic and then who is a smoker and you advise the person to stop smoking or to smoke to reduce cigarette consumption. Ano sagot niya? Hindi, yung tatay ko namatay na 95 years old. Grabe manigarilyo, 15 years old pa lang siya. Hindi naman siya nagka-lung cancer. And that can be explained by the sufficient component cause method. That smoking is not sufficient to cause lung cancer. There is a combination of factors. There's a set of factors that have to be present for lung cancer to develop. We'll discuss about this later on. So these are the uses of epidemiology. It's to identify causal factors, to identify the natural history of disease. A natural history of disease is defined as the course with which a disease goes through without intervention. Pinag-aaralan kung from being good health to dying, or from being good health to developing the disease and recovering from the illness. So, ang natural history of disease ng COVID, ano alam natin? Ano siyang tagal? From your readings. Because the natural history of disease is important because the natural history of disease will tell us the different stages, like the subclinical stage, the clinical stage, etc. And then you have the outcome. By knowing the subclinical stage for COVID, it's ilan? Nagpasa ng latest na COVID. Ang bago-bago siya. Okay, why is it important? Because if somebody with a subclinical form of the disease, meaning to say there are still no signs and symptoms, but the person harbors the organism, that person may infect other people. So may spread the disease. So what happens? We identify these persons and then put them on quarantine. So quarantine is limiting the movement of people who have been exposed to a certain case of, say, COVID, recombinant COVID, for a period equal to the longest incubation period of the disease. The incubation period in subclinical stage, that's identified through studies determining the natural history of disease. Usually, mga bagong diseases, we establish the natural history. How long is the subclinical stage? Meaning to say from acquiring the infection to development of signs and symptoms. So if it's 14 days, based on studies, the average is 14 days, then quarantine will have to be 14 days. And then the next stage will be the clinical stage. How long is the person going to be sick? And that's also the period of time when isolation. Quarantine applies to people who are not sick, but they possibly harbor the organism. They do not show signs and symptoms of the disease. Isolation, as you all know, is applied to those who are clinically apparent diseases. So, ginagamit din ng epidemiology to establish the different stages of the natural history of disease. And the description of the health status of the population is finding out the proportion. That's my time. And I'll just go through the rest quickly. The other used epidemiology is evaluating interventions. So he said that based on studies, we identify interventions, apply this intervention to prevent and control the disease. Now we also have to evaluate whether these interventions work. And you have Professor Ariana Ami tomorrow morning to discuss the different methods, experimental designs to develop, to identify, or to determine rather the effectiveness of intervention. Hindi pwede forever yung intervention na yan. It has to go through evaluation regularly. If you find that the intervention is no longer working, it's no longer achieving the purpose for which it was implemented, then you have to abandon that. You may modify it or think of another intervention because it's going to be a waste of resources if you continue to implement something that is not working. So the goal of epidemiology is identification of disease determinants. So you begin by identifying determining occurrence, its distribution. The distribution will give you some patterns and trends, then a clue about the possible risk factors. And then you identify through epidemiologic studies whether this indeed is a determinant of the particular disease. And then you can now prevent the disease. How can you prevent something if you do not know what is causing it in the first place? It's basically what we see. Kaya na siya evidence-based public health through epidemiological studies. Ito quickly lang, isa lang siguro i-mention ko dito. Yung cholera, water is identified as a reservoir. So determinant ang consumption of water. Hindi siya cause, hindi siya etiologic agent, right? It's just a risk factor. Having that characteristic of consuming water, which has been identified as a possible risk factor, can increase your likelihood of developing disease. So knowing what this factor is can lead us to effective interventions. So 1853, ginawa ng Johnston yung kanya discovery that it's the water. I know it's the water. Kailan ba na-discover ang mikrobyo? By Robert Koch in 1884, in taon after John Snow's work. 31? 31 years pa, di ba? So, ang message na is, hindi natin kailangan hanapin yung specific ecological agent. We can we just have to identify the risk factor. Risk factor is defined increases one's likelihood of developing the outcome of the disease. So, ang dami nito. You can just hit risk during your time. So, on scope of epidemiology, I mentioned earlier that it started as application of methodologies to infectious disease studies, but now we have occupational and environmental epidemiology. So, let's now go to occupational epi. It's the application of epidemiological methods to populations of workers. Basically, it's the same concept as what we have discussed about epidemiology, except that your population of interest is the workplace. For you to be effective in that, you have to be familiar with the subject of occupational medicine. So you know what the hazards are, you know what the risks are that your workers are exposed to. And so occupational epidemiology involves studies of workers who are exposed to certain factors in the workplace, or you do a study among a group of workers who already have the condition that you want the exposure identified. So, looking at workers exposed would be presented as environment workplace. So you have the researcher looking at a person who is exposed to the factor, who does not have the outcome of interest, wala disease or whatever that state is of interest to you. So you observe the person, if the person will develop the outcome given this exposure. The other one is you look at people who already have the disease or the health state of interest to you, and then retrospectively find out if this person who has the disease had history of exposure to a certain factor in the workplace. So these are the two ways of studying or identifying determinants of disease in the workplace. Okay, smoking effects is just example. Ito. In the 1950s then, around the first reported epidemic of disease caused by environmental pollution. They found out in their investigation that mercury compounds were released with the wastewater of a factory into a small bay in Minamata, Japan. And so based on the investigation, the result of the investigation, they found accumulation of methyl mercury in fish, causing severe poisoning in people who ate them. Noong una, akala nila it was a form of infectious meningitis. But after they oriented the disease, when they oriented the disease to the person faced, nag-distribution sila in nila yung cases. And they noted that by place, most cases were residing close to the Minamata Bay. So, and then, when they oriented this is by person characteristics, ano nakita nilang factor? They were almost exclusively members of families whose main occupation was fishing. Siyempre, kung fishing ang occupation ng household rin, ang kinakain nyo rin is that. So based on that, they concluded that there's something in the fish that poisoned the patient. It's not communicable, it's not genetic. So, inabandon na nila yung unang sinabi nila it's infectious meningitis. And so they found this out based on their investigation. Some key concepts in occupational epi, the important role of the environmental factors. Ito, hindi naman ito sabihin na usually, hindi na isang exposure that causes a particular health state, particular disease. It's a combination such as the noise and solvent interaction in hearing loss. So, hindi lang noise per se, but exposure to some solvent. So, there was a study done, a 20-year cohort study, that looked at the possibility of the combined effect noise and solvent exposure in causing hearing loss. So that's just a detail. And then when you talk of exposure, you have to look at the two dimensions of exposure. The level of exposure as well as the duration. So, and then you also have to consider whether you're dealing with past exposure or current exposure. There are cumulative effects. You have for cumulative effect, you have to consider both past exposure and duration. And then exposure can be measured at the individual level in the workplace or as group measurements. So ano mas maganda? Of course, individual level, you can measure the burden of radioactivity in the body. There are some conditions that do not have available tests. So, ang gagawin nyo lang is you get the environmental from the group measurements. So, individual measurements, ito ako na hair sample, may clippings, feces, breast milk. Group measurements, we talk now about summary measures. Kaya may biostatistics lang tayo. Marunong tayo mag-compute ng mean, average, percentiles, or sum of individual persons. And then the concept of environmental monitoring is most important. Biologic monitoring versus history of exposure. So, meron tayong environment, then you're dealing with external dose, whereas biologic would be dealing with internal dose. If there is a means to identify the dose based on some specimens, biologic specimens. The difference between dose effect relationship and dose response relationship is important in occupational epidemiology. So dose effect relationship, the higher the dose, the more severe or intense the effect. Okay? So kung mas marami ba siyang cigarette sticks consumed per day, mas malala pa yung kanyang lung cancer. Whereas dose response relationship talks about the proportion of an exposed group that develops a specific effect. So the higher the dose, the greater the number of people with that effect. So we're talking about the number of people who develop the effect among those exposed. Dose effect relationship is the dose and its effect on the individual person. And the concepts of risk assessment and risk management. Risk assessment is estimating the potential health risks of industrial activities while in operation. So we predict potential health problems in the use of, let's say, new chemicals or new technologies. Whereas risk management refers to the planning and implementation of actions to reduce or eliminate the identified health risks based on the risk assessment. So these are the steps, I can just skip this. Occupational epidemiology is key to promoting health of workers, so occupational health. And WHO defines it as the promotion and maintenance of the highest degree of physical, mental, and social well-being of workers in all occupations. That's the definition of occupational health by WHO. And for you to be able to promote health in the workplace, you employ occupational epidemiology to identify determinants of disease or identify risk factors. So you begin with assessment of the risk. Okay? So, ano natin, in summary, epidemiology is, anong pinakover ng epidemiology? How to count. And how to count, this is very important. How to count, and that's why our next topic is how to measure frequency. Okay. That's one of the, how to compare would be another one. Okay. Another important topic is how to compare, how to make valid comparisons. So those are the important things, and so yung topic natin next, the measures of this frequency, and then the measures of association, because the measure of association is derived by comparing two groups of people, exposed and exposed, or two groups of people with disease and without disease, and then you look back in time to find out that they had history of exposure to that factor. Okay, so are there any questions before I move on to the next topic? Any points you want to clarify? Into intro, and some to review lang. But I hope medyo na ano niyo kung what is intro is video. Yes, sir. Do you have a microphone?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning,
I think
sir.
we would like to explain to the difference of those effect and those
Response.
response. Yes.
Okay, sir. So, those effect is there a relationship between altering the level of the amount of exposure? So let's talk about cigarette smoking. So those effect is if you increase the amount of cigarette sticks consumed, is there going to be an effect? Is going to be a change in the effect on the person? The degree or severity of the disease in the person, is it related to the amount of cigarette sticks consumed per day? That's dose effect. Whether altering the amount will have a change in the effect on the person with respect to, say, severity of the disease. Dose response is something else. Whether increased exposure will lead to an increase in the number of people who are affected. So you talk about, let's say, in a group of 100 people exposed to a certain, let's say, chemical pollutant in the air, is an increase in the amount of pollution going to affect the number of people who will be affected. So it's the proportion, the frequency of those who will be affected. But the studies on dose effect relationship will look at whether increasing the dose will also increase the effect on the severity of the disease. I hope I answered your question, sir.
Parang tatlo, ma'am. Parang, di ba, the dose effect is just, when you increase the dose, the effect will be increased.
The
But
effect in terms of in terms of the severity in an individual.
yes, ma'am. But with regards to those response, I think it is more on the D. You have to think of the D, diba? So when you increase the dose, it will increase the exposure as well, and then it will turn into the increase in severity.
Okay, in severity and dose response.
Increase the number of effect.
The number of people who will be affected. You are correct.
So parang tatlo ang isip.
So meron kang
Parang
intervening.
yes,
Okay, yes. But is the difference between the two clear?
Unlike the other one, it's just the dose effect is just parang direct.
Yes.
So the dose response is parang merong meeting, parang may nag-intervene.
You alter the amount and
Yeah.
see if more people are affected.
Yes.
Reduce the amount and see if less people are affected. So that's dose
So then
response.
and then the effect will depend on
The dose. Yes. Thank you. Any other question? Okay, wala na. So, break na tayo. Let's do break lang.
German tsaka